So for my project, I decided to use the take of book good, technology bad, and kind of combine them to make sense of how both are good, and how one is not better than the other. So to start, books themselves are good. There's a reason that we read, and the reason we read is because we enjoy it. I know for myself, I have old books that I read. For example, I have this book, in case you can see, Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. And it's because I enjoy reading the old fairy tales. And it's because I like to see what morals and lessons were prevalent at the time, in order to see what the values were at the time. And I think that that's something that we do with a lot of stories. So one of the points I'd like to make is that book adaptations are often made into movies, because people enjoy them. The whole reason they get adaptations is because books themselves already have a widespread audience. Um, and in that light, we enjoy creativity, whether it's art, film, or writing, and we like to see how things get adapted. We like to see our stories that we enjoy physically on a screen. So for example, like I said, I like Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. And in those stories, there's stories like Cinderella and how they get adapted into a modern version, like with Disney. So with fairy tales, they're all fictional. And all of the stories that we read in class, except for Orinoco, technically, were fictional stories. And they're all based in the past. And that's partially why I chose Grimm's fairy tale as my own personal version to talk about, along with some of the stories that we did cover in class. And it's because no two stories are going to be the same based on time period. And like I said, it has to go with how lessons are taught, I guess. Like, what are we supposed to learn from the stories? Like, I know in Orinoco, it's supposed to be slavery is bad, and it's because people are attractive at that time, and that's sort of the message. And I know I was in your fairy tales class, so for a lot of the stories, they were for women, much like Orinoco is, and it was to say, hey, maybe we should listen to men. And in this case, Orinoco, it's supposed to be, hey, maybe we shouldn't enslave people. And so that's sort of part of why books are so important. And with adaptations, not everything does get an adaptation. And there's a lot of reasons why. Partially, it can be due to budget, and it can be because there isn't enough of a widespread audience. And with adaptations themselves, not everything gets into the story. There are sometimes details that are cut out that are important for the message of the story, or the screenwriters tend to make the story more modern. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but because they're supposed to make us feel things and they're supposed to have a message. So adapting it to modern times can be beneficial for historians to know more about our times. Like, I know there was an adaptation of Gulliver's Travels, including Jack Black. I haven't personally seen it, but I know that I'm pretty sure that it adapts to be more modern and focus more on the 2000s versus the past. And I think that's something important to notice with stories, is that when they are made modern, it's for a reason. It's to have a message for the current times versus the past. So that's an important thing to take note of with adaptations. And then on other times, like I said, information gets cut out. And so that's actually going to sort of go to my next slide. Because it talks about religion, which you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with anything? And because things change over time, this includes religion. And religion tends to let us know what's good and what's bad, and what is our moral compass supposed to be. And for example, I want to bring in Satan, Paradise Lost. Let's say there was an adaptation where it was changed to be more modern. Satan would not be a bad guy. Satan would be the sexy fallen hero from heaven. And the reason I know this is because we've already started to do that. We've started to change our morals and how we view religion. So with a lot of stories, despite them being Christian stories and despite Christianity still being very prevalent, we tend to feel bad for Satan. There's the whole view of, oh, Satan just loved God so much and then he got exiled from heaven, blah, blah, blah. This is the point we're making. And so we adapt stories based on what our morals are now. We feel bad for Satan because he was exiled versus the reason behind God doing it, if that makes sense. And it shows how the times have changed and how empathy is more prevalent even with evil nowadays. But in the same regard, with stories like Wife of Bath, that would be an explicit bad guy. It's just this weird sort of ties with how religion has impacted us and how, because we have so much more variety of religion allowed, like I know if you were Jewish, you were killed for being Jewish, and if you were Christian, and if you were anything but Christian, and you tried to say that, you were slaughtered. And I don't remember the exact time period, but it was before the 1800s. And I know it was before the 1800s because, again, your fairy tales class, and we talked about how over time Christianity, while still prevalent, it slowly switched to more Greek mythology, as you can see with like some of Shakespeare's plays. With Macbeth, he talks about ghosts, and I'm pretty sure that ghosts are not a part of Christianity. So it's just this weird switch and telling how the times have changed and how they were changing with the stories we've covered. And that sort of goes into my paper and how I talk about how books and stories make us feel. And that's all I've got. Thank you. And stop recording.